everyone, welcome back to another explained video. So today we'll be looking at the FriXion line of products from Pilot, and these are really cool erasable pens, highlighters, and accessories. These are really popular in the store and a lot of people already know and use them a lot and they love them. But it's also really fun to see someone discover the FriXion pens in the store. So if I see someone testing out these FriXion pens, I always make sure to ask, did you know these are erasable? And it's really fun to introduce FriXion pens to those who are new to them. So today we'll go through everything you need to know about FriXion pens, highlighters, and accessories. We'll start by going briefly over the history and the science behind how these erasable pens work. And then we'll look at some pens and highlighters that are available in the FriXion line. So just a little bit about the history of FriXion pens. They were introduced in 2006, first in Europe actually. And that was because European kids in school were already using ballpoint pens and whiteout to take notes, whereas in Japan, people are more used to using mechanical pencils in school. So in 2006 is when they introduced the pens in Europe, and it was a huge success. So a year later, in 2007, they launched it in Japan as well. It quickly became really popular in Japan as well. So after that, Pilot decided to expand the FriXion line with different kinds of pens in different sizes, highlighters, stamps, and other fun things. So just to show you, when they first launched it in 2006, it was this kind of capped pen that they released. And then in 2010 is when they launched the clickable knock version of FriXion pens. I'm gonna try to explain some of the science behind how these work in like the most basic way because I'm not a scientist. But basically, they use this special ink called Metamo ink, short for metamorphosis, and this is a thermosensitive ink, and it's basically made up of three components that work together to make the ink erasable. So first is a special type of dye that can change between a color to being clear, and second is an acid called a color developing acid, and then the third is a temperature sensing chemical compound that decides when the color transition is going to happen. So when you put the thermosensitive ink down like this, and then usually I like to wait for it to dry a little bit before I start erasing. And you would use this hard rubbery eraser to rub like that. So when you rub like that, it's actually the heat from the friction of the rubbing that activates the temperature sensing chemical, which then activates the color developer, and then that changes the color of the dye from colored to clear. And that's how the ink seems to disappear or erase from the friction, which is why these are called FriXion pens. And there is a window of temperature which they disappear and reappear basically. So that window is 60 degrees Celsius or 140 Fahrenheit is when they disappear. And so basically when you rub hard, the heat will reach that temperature and then the ink will disappear. And then if it gets cold enough, which would be negative 20 Celsius or negative 4 Fahrenheit, the ink, if you had erased it, will actually reappear. So because of this temperature range, you do need to be a little bit careful about how you store any notes that you've written in FriXion pens. If you leave them in your car on a really hot day, for example, you might find that your notes have basically disappeared. So that was a little bit about the history and the science behind FriXion pens, and now let's get to the fun part, which is to look at all the FriXion pens and highlighters that are available, because there are so many. So I have some of them laid out here. I pulled out some like different kinds of them to just go over like the wide range of products that are available in this line. FriXion pens come in a variety of forms, so you will find something like this, which is a clickable like knock type. And like we mentioned, we also have these capped type. So with the capped ones, you'll see the eraser on this end right here. And then with these clickable ones, you'll see the erasers on the top of the pens here. And one thing I need to explain a lot in the store actually is that with the clickable ones, you click on the clip actually to engage the pen. A lot of people struggle to find that out actually. But yeah, we have these pens in different kinds of bodies and different thicknesses of the barrel itself, as well as the point size. So you see some of these are skinny, like this one. These are some more skinnier, like barrel. And you'll also find some of them are a little bit thicker and or a little bit nicer and bigger, like these ones. All of them are available in a lot of different colors. So you can see here that you have all these kind of like every color from the rainbow. The FriXion pens are available in different point sizes as well. These are called FriXion Ball, and these are 0.7 millimeter. This one is FriXion Point Knock. This is 0.4 millimeter, and you'll see like differences between these pens. Like this one's got like a conical shape tip, whereas this one has a little needle tip. This one is called FriXion Ball Slim. The body is slimmer and it's also 0.38, so quite thin. And these are called FriXion Zone. And these are pretty cool. They have a different kind of FriXion ink in it, where the ink is a lot blacker than your typical FriXion pen. These are the FriXion Synergy Knock, which are kind of like an update from the FriXion Point Knock. They have the same kind of needle point tip. And then I also wanted to show some special fun versions, like these Keselame special edition pens. So these are actually shimmery, so the ink actually has some glitter to them. And these are really pretty and super popular. There's more colors, and you can also get them like in a set. These are really pretty and so fun. You can also get FriXion pens as multi-pens. So this one is a 3-color multi-pen with the eraser on the top here, and this clip is just for clipping your pen. But you can find these in a lot of different colored bodies. You can get different colored refills, and you can also get them in 2-color versus 3-color versus 4-color pens. These are really nice version of FriXion pens that you can get. These are the same ink as the FriXion Zone ink, but this one, as you see here, it's got like a marbled kind of grip section here, and this one has like a wooden grip section. And all of these FriXion pens, you can get refills for them. So if you were to get like a nicer body pen like this, you can just replace the refills. So now I'm going to show you some swatches of them and actually erase some of them. So I have some swatches here. This is the Keselame special edition pens. Yeah, there's kind of like white glitter particles in here. Okay, and then these were the FriXion Ball in 0.7, the FriXion Point Knock in 0.4, the Slim in 0.38, the FriXion Zone ink with the blacker color, and then these are the Synergy Knock in 0.3, which is very, very fine. So let's just erase them a little bit. Yeah. So depending on your paper, Some papers do better in terms of if you'll see kind of like the residue of the ink, and also how like engraved the page gets. So you might want to test these out in the store or do some research if you know that like the slight like indentations are gonna like really bother you after you've erased the ink. As you can see, all of these are erasing really well. And another thing I love about FriXion pens is that you don't need to worry about like eraser shavings or getting really messy after using erasers, because I personally don't really use mechanical pencils or pencils, and that is a major drawback from using pencils, is that I hate using erasers with them and getting all the eraser dust all over my desk. So this is great if you have that same problem. I also wanted to show some highlighters and markers. This is called FriXion Light because the ink is a little bit like pastel color. There's also like regular colors as well. And then these are FriXion Colors markers. So these are all kind of capped versions with the eraser on this end. And then these are markers actually. And the eraser is on the top here. And then another special kind of FriXion adjacent pen is the Il pen. Il is another line of products from Pilot. A lot of the products in that line are usually kind of like more subtle colors, like pastel colors. They came out with this last year, where it's a color changing Il pen that basically uses the same technology, but instead of going colored to clear, it goes from a color to a different color. Okay, so I have the swatches here. These are the FriXion Light Highlighters. This is the marker. And then I just used my Sarasa pen to test out the FriXion Highlighter. And then this is the Il pen that goes from black to gray. I forgot to talk about these, which are the FriXion Stamps, which are really cool. So these are stamps that come in this little rectangular like body. You see what the stamp is gonna look like on this end, and then you uncap it, and you see the stamp here. And then on this end actually is where the eraser part is. The stamps in the store is really what I have to actually like tell people that it's actually erasable. A lot of people kind of miss that when they look at these for the first time. So this is the swatch for the little stamp. So let's erase some of these. So the highlighter is one of my favorite things about FriXion, mainly because I didn't know about these before I started working here, even though I kind of knew about the FriXion markers or like the FriXion pens. I think it's so cool that they made highlighters that are erasable. And then this is the marker. I want to see how well this works. I think on this particular paper, which is I'm using a Rhodia paper, you can see a little bit of residue of the highlighter, or maybe I think it's actually just a Sarasa pen that's like smudging a little bit, because you don't see the residue here as much. But I think maybe just like this particular combination of the Sarasa ink and the FriXion highlighter isn't like the greatest, because I see a little bit of residue here. But obviously you wouldn't use a FriXion pen with the FriXion highlighter, because then you'll just erase everything. But if you find the right combination of some other ballpoint pen ink or gel ink with the highlighter, this could work very well if you are studying a lot and you make mistakes while highlighting. This is the Il black to gray. So if I erase it right here, instead of disappearing, it'll actually just change color to this gray. The FriXion stamp you can erase as well, which is so cool. The FriXion stamp, I have one at home and I think it puts down a little more ink on the page than the markers or the pens, so you want to wait for it to dry before erasing. On the stamp itself, the eraser is on the edge right here, so you would just use that to erase like this. Another cool thing from FriXion is the Il FriXion stamp. So it works just like the FriXion stamp, but instead of erasing, it'll change color. The last thing I want to talk about is the FriXion Eraser. It looks like a normal eraser, but instead of the rubber eraser part, it's just got like a big chunk of the FriXion eraser on there, which is cool. Yeah, so this is just a big eraser with the big block of the FriXion eraser bit here. If you use a lot of FriXion pens, this would be really handy to have in your pencil case. And also for erasing like larger sections of your notes. So that about sums up today's video on FriXion pens. I hope this video was helpful. If you were wondering how FriXion pens work, it's actually pretty cool. I was reading an article about it and it goes into like a lot more detail. But it was a lot to fit into this video. And it's also interesting how it got started in Europe versus Japan. I hope you enjoyed watching and we'll see you next time. Bye!